Welcome to the first presentation of the KNX Secure Day, in which we are going to have a look at the topic KNX and security. We're going to have a look at why security is important and what you can already do in order to secure your KNX installation. Of course, we're also going to have a look at some incidents that have happened in the past, so that we also are showing that we're not just talking, but we're also reacting to some topics that have happened in the past. So let's just move right on to the first slide of this presentation, which is, we have to agree that the responsibility in terms of security is with us. We see many newspaper incidents in which, or newspaper articles which cover multiple incidents in which we see that hacking is actually easier than we think. And in some cases, a smart home can even put you in danger. Hackers can have a look at your privacy and at your data when it comes to your smart home, and also like brands, big names are not protected from being hacked. So it all comes down to the fact that we as KNX Association have to make sure that the responsibility is not just like to be blamed at somebody else, it's to be found at us. So what do we need security for? Well, the world of technologies is changing. We're going to cover this in the upcoming discussions, but for you, you've also seen that technologies are becoming a part of the world of smart homes and smart buildings. Before that, the world of technology and your smart home or your home, these were two different parts of worlds. Right now, we are actually looking at a fusion of both worlds. So the demand for smart home solutions are rising from enormously, and we know that all. And more functions in the world of smart homes and smart buildings are controlled through technologies. Well, the safety requirements, therefore, for KNX installations are growing. We don't want our information on consumption data to be seen by any third party. We want our locking systems, for example, and door contacts, also, of course, be protected against manipulation. And when it comes to devices for critical functions, we only want them to communicate with required or like allowed participants. And last but not least, data protection in security applications, such as a setting of alarms, is also something that we want to have protected. When it comes to the protection of KNX installations, we are looking at an increased challenge for planners, installers, and manufacturers. And yes, not also only them, but also at us. Many hacking incidents could have been prevented by a correct installation. If everything would have been done in a right way, then many of those incidents could have been prevented. But yeah, right, it's very easy for us to just like point at somebody else, to say the manufacturer should have had like devices which hackers could not enter. The installation could have been done better. And last but not least, of course, the customer should not have just like left all the doors open. However, when incidents like those keep on happening, is it then maybe not time for us to have a look at ourselves and think, right, the technology has to develop? And the example that you actually see here in the presentation, we see like this big hotel in Shenzhen. And also, to be fair, this hotel was actually one hotel that created big hoo-ha when it comes to the question about security and why security is so important. Because this hotel is not just any hotel. This hotel also just not have any installation. It actually has a smart home installation or a smart building installation by KNX, which actually was tampered with. So let's have a look actually at real hacking scenarios, and let's also get started with the hotel here. What happened there? The situation was that the KNX devices controlled everything that you could control in the building, from shutters, light, air conditioning, and everything else that actually you would like to have run on a smart technology, and everything in the smart home. The installation ran on a KNX net IP backbone, which then was also used as the main line. So far about the requirements that we had here. Right, it was a very luxurious hotel, so every guest that entered that hotel received a tablet with the Butler app. This Butler app allowed you to control the whole installation. And also, as it is standard in any hotel, every guest was also given a Wi-Fi key that allowed them to use the free internet connection. So far, so good. So we have a nice KNX installation. We had a tablet that allowed to control the installation, and also every guest was given a Wi-Fi key to also enter the Wi-Fi and to serve free of charge. Woohoo! There is like the telegram which is sent on the bus. Right. The hacker, well, let's call him the hacker, he observed that the tablet was communicating only through a Wi-Fi connection. So he assumed that that was how also the whole room was controlled. The Wi-Fi was protected, but the hacker just tried out the Wi-Fi key that was given to him to access like the internet from a higher level. And he saw that the access to the internet protected by that key actually worked. So he just used that key that he was given also to access the whole Wi-Fi of the whole building, and that worked. The hacker just wouldn't believe it, or he just couldn't believe it, that it was so easy and that he could tamper with the installation. So he asked for a new room, in which he then actually used everything that he just figured out, the access to the installation, the access to the Wi-Fi, also through the key that he was given, and he actually had access to the room. No, actually, that's not true. He could see that a certain port was used. So the port was 3671. He Googled it, and it turned out that this was the standard port, which is often used with KNX. With all the information that he had, he then was able to control or switch the light in the room that he was, to switch the light in another room. Hacker man. That's what they said. So this man, therefore, like actually he used what was given to create quite a newspaper, not shortage, but he created some headlines in which he could show that KNX could be hacked. Was it really a hacking incident? Well, it's up to you to decide. But of course, that was not the only incident. We shall have a look at something that happened in the world of KNX, and something that happened here was that, again, like a hacker accessed a KNX installation by removing a device which was hanging up on the top floor. And so he removed that device and he added a device which then could listen to the KNX bus. All the reports and findings were then also transmitted through a Wi-Fi network, and after this device has read what was going on the Wi-Fi network or on the KNX bus, it then sent its findings to the person who was then listening to what was going on. Right. The hacker then actually said that once after he's seen everything that was going on the bus, it was very easy for him to then tamper with the whole installation, to make changes, to actually switch on and switch off light. In this particular case, actually, he said that he had access to the whole airport installation, which actually rings maybe some bells, because in many cases where KNX is not really used, the hacker claimed that he had access to the whole control of the airport. So no matter what it was, we cannot say that it was not true what he said, because what he said actually sounds theoretically possible. And also this kind of way of hacking KNX was then covered by the newspaper outlet. Let's have a look at another case that was covered by a German newspaper article. What happened here? A hacker walked around a smart home. He saw a device, a movement detector in this case, that he easily just could remove. And there he also put on a device that, again, read everything that was going on the bus. And by fingerprint analysis, the functionality of the installation then was reverse engineered. And then the hacker could take over control of the house. But what we also have to take into consideration here is that that hacker had to remove the detector first. It had to be unnoticed. And apparently all communication of the whole house went on through a single line. Right. Now I pointed out those cases. Maybe for some of you it was obvious. For some of you it might not be that obvious. But the question here is, could all those hacking scenarios have been prevented? And the obvious answer is Of course. And now in the following slides, I'm going to explain to you how, with some simple tips and tricks, you can already secure your KNX installation, no matter if it's an existing one or if it's an installation with upcoming devices. So what is very important to take into consideration? First step, make sure that all the devices are properly fixed on the wall so that not everybody can remove those devices. I know, like, some points might sound so obvious, but when they're so obvious, they are not in the focus of the installer, respectively, of everybody else who is using it. For example, use special screws when you attach those devices. We've got special screws like these, and especially when you mix those screws, then, yeah, that hacker would need multiple screwdrivers in order to remove the screws. So here we already have a very effective tool to secure your installation. And then we also could have seen that many of those hacking incidents that happened before could not have happened. But of course, that's not all. What is very important is that you also have your KNX devices really be protected from any access. So when you have actuators, put them in the according distribution board, close it, and make sure that you're the only one who has the key. How often have we seen, once we went to a hotel, that there was like the distribution box with all the fuses and so on, that you could just open it and tamper then with the installation? And often has it happened that I personally have seen that like all the KNX devices were there. Very easy, and what to do is just put them in a distribution box and make sure that this distribution box is locked so that nobody else can access those devices. Installation of cables and devices is also very important, that you can make sure, that you have to make sure that nobody has access to any cables and any devices. No loosely hanging cables, because each hanging cable is an entry door to your installation. Make sure that all the cables are well hidden. Also, when you have devices, and this refers to the example that we had from the German newspaper article, the movement detector that was used, please hang it just up so high that somebody needs to have a ladder to remove this device. And after you see, like at your neighbor's house, somebody walking around with a ladder, turning around, he's not just looking maybe just for an entry in your building, or he's not looking for any windows that have not been shut. He might also be looking for any loose cables or any possibilities in order to go in. Anyway, when you see somebody with a big ladder running around in circles trying to access your building, most likely, when you have good neighbors or some kind of neighborhood watch, somebody might be alarmed. So you see that just already hanging up devices and making the device or the installation not easily accessible is already a way to secure your devices. Right. In some cases, of course, like in public domains, as we had at the airport. Again, here, it might be very easy to just remove a KNX device like a switch. If you use switches, you can also already, or you can just use conventional switches when you just want to have like the light be switched on and off. And if you use conventional devices, you can always use a binary input that sent 1 and 2. Those binary inputs already, as you can see here, the cables are preventing the direct access to the bus. The bus device is hidden and usually not to be accessed. So already using a binary input can help you to secure your installation, just state of the art. As mentioned before, loosely hanging cables, each cable that you give access to is an entry door to your installation. So please make sure that not only you have loosely hanging cables well hidden and protected, also make sure that the cable as such is hidden and that nobody actually can have access to the cable. And here in this example that we've also seen before, if you have two areas, like an outside area and an inside area, please use line couplers, because those line couplers can prevent that if a hacker could get access to the outside of a building, which can happen in parking lots, in toilets, and so on. Once this hacker has access to one part of the installation with the according filter table, you can prevent that hacker to have access to the rest of the installation. So in our example that we had here, maybe that one person, or the example that we mentioned before of the smart home, when you have access to the outside area, congratulations, you can control, let's say, the light which goes on and off by a presence detector, but you do not have access to the rest of the house and leave the poor inhabitant in a dark house. You can't do this because once you use the according line couplers with the rightly set filter tables, nobody can access the rest of your house. What about Powerline? In Powerline communication, which is also still used in KNX, you have the possibility to also use according electronic filters, which can see or which filter the incoming and outgoing signals. So by using those electronic filters, you can already make sure that nobody who has access to just like your electricity can have also access to your KNX installation. Right, so far we covered twisted pair, we twisted power line, we twisted, let's say, common sense, not we twisted common sense, but we covered common sense by, yes, do not give access to your devices. Please put your devices in a distribution board and make sure that nobody has access to those devices. Right, now we're going to the world of Ethernet, IP, computers, everything else that actually makes everybody think, okay, right now, how are you going to solve this? And the world of, let's say, IT, computers, and KNX, this is also something that is going to be covered in the upcoming presentations, discussions, because this is, of course, a very easy way for people to access your world. Well, before we actually talk about how people from the outside can enter your house, let's just talk about the Ethernet, let's say the network inside your building. To make sure that nobody has access to the installation that you have, we highly recommend that you have a dedicated network only for your KNX hardware, so for your routers and switches and so on. So please do not have it run, like the hotel before, everything on one network. Please use two networks, one for the internet communication and the other one for everything else that is going on here. When you have like your dedicated network, then you have everything that you can use in order to also protect your networks, such as MAC filters, encryption, and you can change and hide the SSID. If this is a bit too much because you might be only a KNX technician, we also highly recommend then to get somebody on board who is an IT specialist, and that person then can take care that your network is secured against any unauthorized tampering. Right, that was the network from the inside, but what if you want to use the internet? The internet nowadays, what people would like to do is they would like to control their houses with a smartphone, with a tablet. Right, this is the future. It's not the future, it's like what many people are already doing. And often the communication is done through KNX Net IP. However, what many people do not know is that KNX Association never intended KNX Net IP for this way of communicating with your house. But well, time took it, and this way of communicating has now been established for the communication between KNX and the world of the internet. Therefore, we cannot prevent that KNX Net IP is used for the communication between KNX and the world of internet. But when you use it, please make sure that you do not have any open ports for routers towards the internet. Please always use the according firewall, and please change all default settings to something that only you know in order to block any communication from and to the internet. There are also various ways that you hear. One of the most common way to secure your installation, respectively the communication through the internet, is by the use of a VPN. A VPN requires an extra router or server with VPN functionality. Also, very important to know that there are also manufacturer-specific solutions in order to secure your installation. So we have, again, to summarize this, we have communication that you could have from the network right straight to the internet, which is something that we do not recommend, which we never recommended, and we always appealed to the KNX community to either use a VPN through an according router with the according functionality and the according servers, or at least a manufacturer-specific way to have the access between KNX and the internet been secured. Well, there are also many ways that you have to take into consideration when you want to have your installation secured. For example, we do not want to, or we do not recommend to go from broadcast communication. Please rather use a point-to-point communication, and always set your according key in the ETS so that nobody has access to the to your installation. With all those tricks that I just mentioned, that I pretty much rushed through, it could have been easily prevented, or like all those hacking incidents could never have happened. But those things just have happened. Let's have a look again at the real hacking scenarios that we had before. So there were, of course, countermeasures for preventing the access from one room to the other. One could have been like by using a dedicated network for the building automation. And apparently, it still has to be said, but do not give the network access to any unauthorized people. Please always change any kind of default settings that you have, which is like the setup of the multicast address for the runtime communication, as well as the default port, which is often used with KNX. So please change that. And then this would not have happened. In case 2, again here, please do not make your KNX devices and cables accessible to any unauthorized people. When you have devices in ceilings or in cabinets, please make sure that nobody else can access them. And if there's no way for you to hide all your devices, because like of course you need to have access to a push button and so on, please use then the according and the anti-theft clamps, the according push button screws and whatever you have, and the according interfaces, the push button interfaces such as binary inputs, because those prevent the direct access to the installation. Also very important here, please observe everything that is going on. This is a tip to all facility managers. Every now and then, please observe what is going on the bus. And when you see something is weird, then you should have a look at what is going on here. Also, for the facility manager, again, when you see a network that you do not know, then there is a chance that a hacker is nearby. For everybody who's participated in a trade show, now maybe it becomes clearer why each Wi-Fi network needs to be registered before you just set up your own Wi-Fi network. Countermeasures for the case that we had before. Yes, again here, please make your KNX devices and cables inaccessible. Please put them up on a according level that nobody can access. And please make sure just that nobody has access to all your devices. From the outside, again, please use anti-tamper protection and use a dedicated subnetwork that then prevents the access from the outside world to the inside world. You see the hacker is outside. We don't want him to go inside. The couplers should always be configured to that the telegrams do not pass from one direction to the other, and also not from the inside to the outside. So please make sure that the according filter tables are used and do not pass any point-to-point telegrams. But stop. You might have now the question, right? KNX is, of course, using, in many cases, twisted pair communication, or we mentioned before, Powerline IP. But how would you prevent actually the access of radio frequency transmission? How do we actually protect the broadcast communication? Well, this is part of this whole KNX Secure Day. I mentioned it before. We have a solution for you about which we're going to talk about in the second part of this event. So for now, I would therefore like to thank you very much for your attention. Please keep all those points, which are also to be found in the KNX Secure checklist, always in your mind before you start with a project, when you start with a project, and when you do the handover of a project. Go through all those points, because once you've taken care of all those points, then you are certain that you have taken everything that you can do in the traditional manner to protect your installation. So far from my point, so far from the KNX Secure checklist. Now it's time to actually hear what our KNX community members have to say, and we shall move on to the next panel discussion that we've prepared for you. So please stay tuned, take good attention, because each of those discussions and presentations and interviews will be part of the upcoming quizzes. Let's move on to the next point.